Help! Am I dating a narcissist? Well, it seems like that's the question that everybody wants to know the answer to these days. And if you found your way here, then it's probably safe to say that some things clued you on to the fact that a lot of things simply don't add up about the relationship you're in or have recently been in. So I'm going to give you 10 red flags to look out for, which will give you a much better idea of if you're dealing with a narcissist or not. Hi, I'm Steve Richards, and at the time of filming this, I'm 4 months post-discard of an emotionally abusive relationship with a covert or vulnerable narcissist. Now, I'm assuming that you've stumbled across this video because you're in a similar position to the one I'm in now, or the one I was in just a few short months ago, and are dealing with the emotional trauma and trying to find out what is happening or what the hell has just happened. You won't know which way is up or what on earth you're dealing with. And if you're past the devaluation stage and are post-discard with your narcissistic abuser ending the relationship, you'll be in an emotional tailspin somewhere between hurt, confusion, anger, sadness, resentment, bitterness, foolishness, and of course rejection. Most of all, you'll be wanting answers. Answers that will never come, and you'll be seeking closure that is never going to be given. So why the narcissistic blueprint? Well, because when you're dealing with a narcissist, you'll soon come to realise that they all adhere to the same basic principles and practices. They will exemplify the very same character traits, and every single one of their relationships will follow an almost identical trajectory. Why? Because they all have the same primary motivation: attention. Being the centre of the universe is their lifeblood. It is their fuel or their narcissistic supply. Now, I'm not your typical victim. I boxed as a teenager, I've been in and around gyms and weights my entire adult life, and far more importantly than that, I consider myself to be mentally very resilient and very stable. I'm robust and I'm self-disciplined. I've always been very astute at reading people, and most crucially of all, I have a keen sense of self-awareness. I know exactly who I am, and I don't consider myself to be anxious or neurotic. Yet, I was sucked in completely, hook, line and sinker. So what's the purpose of these videos? Well, it's not diagnosis. They're not at all to diagnose narcissistic personality disorder in others, nor are they an alternative to proper therapy if you've suffered prolonged traumatic emotional abuse at the hands of somebody else. Essentially, what I'm trying to do is to provide clarity, and most importantly, some reassurance. Primarily reassurance that you are not alone. You didn't imagine it, you're not weak, you're not foolish, naive or stupid, and more than anything, I'm hoping to provide some validation that, yes, you're right to feel the way that you do. Everything that you're currently feeling, the shock, the longing, the hurt, the shame, the anger, and the bizarre sense of loss, all of it, it's all completely normal and entirely reasonable to feel all of that. It's important that you realise and truly understand that you've been in an abusive relationship, and if you're anything like me in the position that I was in, it's entirely possible that you didn't even know that you were in an abusive relationship at the time of being in it. It wasn't until after the final discard that I had the wherewithal to finally gather myself enough to Google why someone that I had been in a relationship with for 7 years would suddenly just disappear. Not answer any calls, not pick up voice messages, and wouldn't even text to reassure me that they were even still alive and not dead somewhere in a ditch. In less than 5 minutes, I felt the shiver of horror down my spine as I read the character traits and behavioural patterns associated with narcissistic behaviour and narcissistic personality disorder, and she ticked every single box with aplomb. Now, obviously, I was utterly dumbfounded, and whilst I was heartbroken at what I was reading, I was also angry, but not angry with her, strangely enough, angry with myself, because all of the signs and red flags had been there all along, and right from the very beginning. In my naivety, I ridiculously thought that a narcissist was usually male and was very full of themselves, a preening peacock of a man who spent far too much time womanising and admiring himself in the mirror, perhaps at the gym. Surely this petite, demure and incredibly feminine creature that was so full of self-doubt, anxiety and cripplingly low self-esteem couldn't possibly be suffering from narcissistic personality disorder. Yet, the more links that I clicked and the more videos I watched, the more the facts became irrefutable. The incredible first couple of years of platonic friendship, which then turned to what I thought was love, and then commitment, was nothing more than the intense love bombing of the idealization phase. And when subsequently she had thrown her hands up in furious self-pity at my supposedly neglectful behaviour, she had then pulled away. But not to compartmentalise and to self-protect as she had claimed so often, it was simply the act of narcissistic shelving, routinely giving me the silent treatment as a punishment and to cause confusion and reassert control and regain dominance. Now, whilst I cognitively knew that I hadn't been neglectful or unkind, I made excuses for her because of her past treatment at the hands of abusive men in her life. And it was only post-discard that I joined together the dots to see that everyone in her life had seemingly been abusive, uncaring, or destructive and unappreciative. Now, how much truth is in those accounts, one can only hazard a guess at. All I can be certain of is that I will be yet another name added to the list of ex-partners who have mistreated her after she has carried out a skewing of facts and a convenient revision and rewriting of history. These videos are a very personal account whereby I will share all of my experiences both in and out of the relationship. I don't intend to name and shame her, and whilst I have no doubts whatsoever about her status as a narcissist, it's not a clinical diagnosis that I'm qualified to make. So I shall refer to her only by the pet name I used to call her by, which was Curly. The most important thing that you can do to help yourself right now is to gain insight into what a narcissist is and precisely what you're dealing with. If there's one piece of advice that I can give you, and this isn't condescending because I'm still working on it and I have to remind myself of this daily, it's that you can't apply rational human emotional thinking to the mind and thought processes of someone suffering from narcissistic personality disorder. There are some very valuable sources of information out there. I'd particularly recommend that you search out H.G. Tudor, a diagnosed and self-confessed narcissist and psychopath. After all, what better way to understand the motivations of a narcissist than from a narcissist himself? Once you understand the calculated detachment that the narcissist employs, either consciously or subconsciously, it makes you understand how emotionless and parasitic these creatures actually are. You cannot try to understand what you have been subjected to using emotional thinking, which is what normal, healthy people like you or I have such a hard time unravelling. Their mindset is so alien to those of a healthy disposition, it's impossible to comprehend. It's going to take prolonged and consistent work to not only begin to process, but you're going to have to continually remind yourself of this fact in order to heal and ultimately recover. So back to the original question, help, am I dating a narcissist? Well, in order to build up a picture of what you're dealing with, these are the typical red flags and personality traits of someone with a narcissistic personality. It's not an exhaustive list, and the severity of these traits will vary from one narcissist to the next, but it should help you to determine and differentiate between whether you're dealing with someone who is just a weapons-grade a-hole of a human being, or whether in fact you're dealing with someone who is higher on the narcissistic spectrum. These traits are the main giveaways, and if you're in a relationship of any kind with someone who displays at least half of them, then you should definitely consider doing some further study or research. Number 1, a pathological lack of empathy. They completely lack the ability to know what those around them are feeling by emotional sensitivity. They might be able to use logic to assess that if you were passed up for promotion, you might be feeling disappointed or frustrated, but they won't be able to feel those emotions coming directly from you. They lack the ability to connect to another human being emotionally. Everything about their interaction is transactional. It all relates only to what you can give them in terms of support, validation, status, or security. Because they are by their very nature self-serving creatures, they don't possess the ability to love unconditionally or value anyone else's feelings above their own, not even for the most fleeting of moments. Number 2, an enormously inflated sense of entitlement. It is their deep-seated belief that they deserve anything and more over everything that they ask for, and exactly when they demand it. It will often be very one-sided too. They will deserve to be put on a pedestal and treated like royalty. And it is their God-given right, because such is their conceit. They harbour the belief that they're actually better than everybody else around them. Number 3, a pompous sense of grandiosity. Their delusions of grandeur will often take the form of displaying a self-image that they can't really afford. They will inevitably live beyond their means, and it's possible that they'll be very hung up on designer labels and brands. They will take a derisory view of the lesser status high street brands because they're for the peasants, which leads me on to the next character trait. Number 4, status seekers. They will largely be preoccupied with mixing with people of social standing or status, with impressive friendship circles, and they will only want to hang out with people deemed worthy of their company. Often, they will date as an in or a gateway to gain in beneficial friendship groups or to aid in the act of social climbing. They will also inevitably be quite shallow and almost obsessive about their self-image and personal grooming. They will not only be concerned about their appearance and the material trappings that imply wealth, such as their car, their wardrobe, or furnishings within their home, but this will also leak over into the appearance of people around them and how other people's appearance reflects back on them. Now, this is particularly true of their romantic partners. They will seek out socially successful people and high achievers because this in turn makes them look better and bolsters their carefully constructed but very fragile self-image. Number 6, they're emotionally unstable. They will often display their inability to regulate their emotions. They will be incredibly volatile and prone to throwing tantrums or hissy fits because of their massively inflated sense of entitlement. One of the biggest red flags here is it will feel as though they're emotionally underdeveloped, and it will often seem like persistently dealing with a sulky and self-centered child. Number 7, they're hypersensitive to criticism. Because of their inflated sense of worth and their need to protect their carefully created false self, they cannot handle criticism well at all, and often it's perceived criticism too. If it relates to a hang-up or something that they're already self-conscious about, they will become agitated and extremely angry, and almost instantly. It rarely takes the form of a gradual build-up. It will be a volatile and instant explosion. Because of this emotional irregularity, you will invariably feel as though you're constantly walking on eggshells around them in order to avoid triggering these fits of rage. They can also be particularly sensitive to question marks over their financial status or anything that might cause a dent in the shiny veneer of how others view them. Number 8, a constant need for validation. They constantly need to have their efforts recognised, however big or small. They will also need to be the centre of attention and will clamour for reassuring compliments about how smart or funny or good looking they are. More than anything, they hate to be ignored and are in their element when the spotlight is firmly fixed upon them. Number 9, a lack of accountability. Now, this one is the trademark of the narcissist, a complete lack of accountability. Nothing is ever their fault. Narcissists will lie through their teeth and say absolutely anything. But the one thing you won't ever hear them say is the word sorry. In 7 years spent with Curly, she never once apologised for anything. I would get explanations and I would get reasons as to why nothing was ever her fault. Invariably, this was done via the favourite narcissistic tactic of blame shifting, the act of recollecting or highlighting something that you did or didn't do that caused them to behave in the way that they did. And it won't matter how vile or despicable their behaviour is, it will still be justifiable because you made them do it. And finally, number 10, they love conflict. If there's one thing a narcissist loves, it's drama. They will do anything to incite a row. Conflict is where they are most comfortable because they're extracting huge amounts of fuel. They delight in the fact that the focus is solely on them and you're expending huge amounts of energy, which to a narcissist is utterly intoxicating. And this pattern of behaviour won't just exist within your relationship with them, it will be scattered all throughout their lives. They will forever be falling out with family members, friends or colleagues from work. And it's also very likely that they will continually have a new best friend who appears to be flavour of the month one minute and then whom they're complaining about and giving the cold shoulder to the next. So now that you know what to look for, what should you do next? Well, what I'm aiming to establish is a forum of support with both the confusion during the relationship as well as post-discard, and particularly support in those times of weakness during zero contact. There have been many occasions over the last 4 months where I've had to fight every single instinct and urge to reach out to Curly, where I have missed her, or more accurately, I've missed the us of the golden period, even despite coming to understand that she was emotionally manipulative and abusive, and that everything I thought the relationship was nothing more than a mirage. Everywhere you look, every piece of advice is exactly the same. Go zero contact immediately. Delete your social media profiles and block their number. Even change your number if you can. But it's not quite as simple as that. In most of what I've seen and read, they will all tell you to go zero contact as though it's like flicking off a light switch. What is never addressed is just how complex an emotional roller coaster that actually is. The trauma bonding is often incredibly strong, and the magnetic pull of your abuser should definitely not be underestimated. You're going to need support in times of weakness, and more than anything, I hope that perhaps that's what these videos might help to provide you with. Remember this above all else. It's not weakness wanting to contact them, or stupidity desperately hoping that they might reach out to you. That is the manifestation of their sustained and psychological abuse. Whilst there may not be bruising or marks outwardly, make no mistake, you are a victim of emotional trauma and systematic and calculated manipulative abuse. The scars are on the inside and they run very deep because they were inflicted when you didn't even know it was happening and throughout the entirety of the time that you knew them. Even in the part that was magical, and even when you felt truly exhilarated by the way that they seemingly loved you and understood you like nobody else ever has. Not just during the devaluation of you, or the anger, or the silent rage of being shelved and ultimately discarded. Narcissistic personality disorder is the most insidious of mental disorders. I really hope you found this video a useful introduction to what we will get into and cover in more detail and depth in upcoming videos. And if you have found this useful, and now you know what a narcissist looks like, why not check out this video, which explores exactly what you can expect from a relationship with a narcissist. It details the exact pattern the relationship will follow, the specific phases that you will inevitably be subjected to, and precisely what treatment you can expect in each one of those phases of the narcissistic relationship cycle. So in closing, what I'd really appreciate is if you were to give this video a like, a share, and perhaps even subscribe, and then leave a comment down below letting me know what you think. Or if you're comfortable with it, to share your own personal experiences, or even a message just to say what areas of narcissistic relationships you'd like to see discussed and put under the microscope. Together, we will get through this.